The block is still attached to the mountain, and they are splitting it free using nothing but fire, water, and under a sky that feels older than Rome itself. They are breaking stone by making it expand and contract, and the crack running through this block is exactly where they want it to go, like they have done this 1,000 times before. Block is moving, not because they have technology, but because they have perfected the mathematics of leverage and the patience of men who know this will take years. Every few meters they replace the rollers, and every roller is a tree that took decades to grow. The ramp is not natural, it is built by human hands from the same earth they are trying to conquer, and every step forward costs them something permanent.
The blocks already here fit so tightly that a blade of grass cannot fit between them, and this new block must...
One mistake, one rope snapping, and 1,000 men die instantly, but the engineer does not flinch. Because he has the stone fits, and for a moment no one cheers, they just breathe, because they know there are still a dozen more blocks this size waiting in the quarry. No machine moved these stones, no crane lifted them, no modern tool touched them, and yet they sit here every morning begins the same way, with water, with stone, and with men who know their families will never see what they are building. The architect does not write his name anywhere. And he knows that if he succeeds, history will forget him. They polish the bottom of a stone that will never be seen by anyone, a surface that will sit against another stone for eternity, and still they made it perfect. The tools they use for these stones do not look like any Roman tool. I have reorganization, and the soldier does not let me touch them, he just watches. The holes in this stone are too straight, too deep, too precise, and when I ask how they made them, the workers just look at the ground and say nothing. There are tunnels under the stones that should not exist, channels that carry water nowhere.
The ropes are made of hemp, the pulleys are wood, and yet this stone drops straight down.
These men speak a language that will be dead in 300 years. They eat food that will rot. They build for gods who will be forgotten, and still they do not stop. The father wants his son to see what he built, not knowing that in 20 years, that son will die moving the same kind of stone. The platform is finished, but the men do not celebrate. In that silence is the answer to how they move.
Quarry is a world built of effort. Every mark tells a story of survival. The scale of this labor defies reason.
One wrong move could crush dozens.
Yet, the alignment is flawless. Every inch requires absolute precision. The masters disagree on the angle of the cut. The sun rises higher, and the work slows. I must record these mechanics before they are forgotten. A monument built for the gods, on the backs of men. It is larger than any stone I have ever witnessed. The sound pierces the mind. Even the water tastes of dust. Their calculations must be precise. The scale of this temple
defies human strength. The scale of this alignment defies regular measure.
Listen to me! Steady the base!
The alignment shifts too far left. The alignment is still off by 2 inches near the base. We must deepen the western cut before noon.
The depth of this cut matches the temple grid perfectly. We must verify the lower level before the next shift begins. Check the depth of the alignment before the next strike. The foundations will not hold if the eastern face is uneven. Hold the line on the left side.
The strain is shifting. Record the pressure points now. The angle must hold.
The earth is giving way under the weight.
Hold the line!
Do not let it drop.
By the gods, that block nearly took the lower ramp down with it.
The fracture lines are widening faster than they can brace them.
This work will consume this valley before the foundation is even finished.
The scale of this design defies the natural order. The scale defies human limitation. One more monument to the sun. The heat demands its tribute. The sheer scale of this task defies standard reason. Every strike of the chisel leaves a permanent mark on history. The foundation stands ready for what comes next. The scale of this labor defies understanding. This monument will outlast the empire itself.
Every inch of movement costs 1,000 pounds of effort, and the stone does not want to leave the earth. It clings to the quarry like a child refusing to let go of its mother. They do not break the stone. They convince it to break, the copper wedges singing a song of fracture that the rock has known since the mountain was born. I have seen the numbers on paper, but paper cannot capture the sound of men breathing like this. Water is their secret weapon, turning the ground into glass for just a moment, and in that moment the impossible becomes merely difficult.
There is no foreman shouting here, no one giving orders. The chain moves like a single organism.
The crane is just a beam and a rope, but the angles are perfect, the leverage exact. These men understand physics the way a bird understands the wind, without ever reading a single formula. Mistakes here cost time, not lives, and I realize that is a kindness. These men have built a world where error is... The carvings are not decoration, they are memory. Every spiral, every line, every curve is a story that will outlive the man who carved it. Some stones are left behind, not because they are flawed, but because the earth decided they belong to itself. And even these builders knew when to surrender. Jesus. Every morning the sun rises and the work begins again. And I understand now that Baalbek was never meant to be finished. They understood fire and water better than we understand steel, the stone splitting exactly where they wanted it to because they knew heat is just slow violence. Every block is a negotiation. The lever, the roller, the rope, all of them speaking a language of force and patience that I am only beginning to understand. He carves his name where no one will ever see it, not for glory, but because the stone will know who touched it, and that is enough. I watch the stone rise and I forget to breathe, because one broken rope, one wrong pull, and 100 men.
They build monuments to gods, but they feed each other like family, and...
From up here I see the plan. Every stone has a place, every man has a role, and the whole thing is held together by nothing but trust. The chisel is passed from hand to hand, and with it passes 1,000 years of knowing how to make the earth obey. The boy is no longer a boy. At night the quarry breathes, the stone cools, the dust settles, and I am the only one here to hear it. The temple is not finished. It is only ready for tomorrow, and tomorrow there will be another stone, and another man. They cut these stones so perfectly that the earth itself cannot find the gap, and the wall is not built, it is grown from the rock. Every mistake is also a lesson, and this stone will never be moved again, but the boy who studied it will move 10 more. The tools are not left behind, they are put to bed, and in the morning they wake up in the hands of men who know their weight. Water must flow away from the temple, or the temple will flow away, and so they dig while the sun burns, knowing the rain does not wait.
Even the smallest stone is locked in place with molten metal. Nothing here is left to chance. This column will never stand, but it is already beautiful, because beauty is not finished, it is begun.
They carry the mountain on their backs, and the mountain does not complain, because the mountain knows it will become the floor of a god. The chisel is born again in fire and water, just like the stone is born again in the hands of the mason. Everything here is reborn. The stone floats for a moment, caught between earth and sky, and in that moment we are all holding our breath. The temple is finished, but it has never been empty, because every man who worked here left a piece of himself.
I have watched them move mountains, but these 3 stones are not mountains anymore. They are the spine of the world itself.
Each inch costs 1,000 pounds of pressure, and there are 100 inches left to go, but these men have already decided they will finish before the sun sets. The mason does not trust his eyes, he trusts his fingers, because the stone does not lie to the hand that touches it. He is carving a garden that will never bloom, a forest that will never shed its leaves, and yet he treats each petal as if it were alive. They eat the same bread their fathers ate. They tell the same stories their grandfathers told, and they will build the same temples their ancestors dreamed. The gods demand blood, sweat, and stone, but they also demand water, because even the most powerful god grows thirsty. The crane is coming down because the work is done, and the temple will stand alone now, without the skeleton that built it. The smoke does not fill the temple, it blesses the temple, turning stone into sanctuary, turning work into worship.
The sun will set on this temple 1,000 times, and each time
I was here when this temple was born. I watched men bleed into the stone, and now
the gap between these stones is smaller than the width of a fingernail, and that gap has not changed in 2,000 years.
The temple was not built only for the gods above. It was built for the water below. Every drop that fell...
The rope around it has rotted, but the stone has not sagged a single millimeter. That is not craftsmanship, that is obsession.
The ceiling of this room is a map of the sky from the night the temple was dedicated. And temple is not just a place of prayer, it is a bank of hope. Every basket of grain is a deposit against the drought that might come. Every stone in this floor has a signature. The man who cut it left his mark so that his children would know which stone their father made. From up here, the city looks small, but every person down there is carrying a story, a hunger, a love, a fear.
I walked into this temple as a builder, and I am walking out as a ghost, because the moment a temple is finished,
This is where the temple was born, not in a drawing on papyrus, but in a man's back, bending against the earth. The architect draws on paper, but the quarryman, and when the stone is cut wrong, there is no erasing. Every block they move is a gamble against gravity, and gravity never loses, it only waits for one moment of weakness to take back what was stolen from the earth. The road to the temple is not paved with gold. It is paved with the tracks of stones that have been dragged through the same mud for years.
the joints are so tight because the stones are not stacked. They are married, each one carved to fit its neighbor.
The builder builds for strength, but the mason builds for beauty. And when the mason carves a lion, he is not... Up here the air is thinner and the ground looks like a threat, but every man on this scaffold has learned to trust the wood, the rope, and the man holding the other end of the rope. When the block fits, there is a moment of silence, and in that silence the entire temple breathes, because another piece of the puzzle has found its home.
The day ends the same way it began, with the temple standing and the men walking home, and tomorrow they will come back.
At dusk, the temple becomes a body, and the columns are its ribs, and the courtyard is its heart. When the torches are lit, the stones become alive, their shadows moving like muscles beneath skin.
These spirals are not decoration. They are a language no one remember how to speak, and the apprentice's fingers...
Even the perfect stone can crack, and the mason's hands do not tremble, but the weight of this stone means his mistake could kill more men. The joints between these stones are so tight that a blade of grass cannot fit between them, and yet the copper wedge is not for fiddles. Beneath the temple there is another temple, and beneath that temple there is a memory of something older, and the paint...
This painting is not myth. It is history, because the stones that fell... Up here the stones are silent, and the fire is warm, and the child does not know.
The giants were just men with stronger backs and shorter lives, and the song is the only monument they left behind. At midnight, the quarry looks like a city of unfinished souls, stones that were promised to the temple, but...
The sun rises and the temple is still here, and the worker raises his arms not to worship the...
Behind every giant stone there is a village of small lives, women who wake before dawn to grind the wheat. Children grow up hearing the chisel sound as their lullaby.
The supervisor's scroll contains calculations that would not be rediscovered for 3,000 years.
The lever is the first gift the gods gave to men, a long stick and place to stand, and when 20 men push to... Every tool in this room has a name and a purpose and a story. This chisel has cut stone for 30 years. The priests come to bless the stones because they believe the stones have souls. And maybe they are right, because from up here the whole world becomes a diagram of labor. The quarry is a wound in the earth. The paths are veins of traffic. Water is the quietest weapon in the ancient world, poured into a crack and left to swell the wood wedges until the stone splits along a line. The moment of placement is the most dangerous. A stone moved for months can crush everything in 1 second. When it settles, the workers exhale.
At midday, the temple rests, and the workers become men again, not machines. They share water.
The offering is not for the gods, it is for stones themselves.
So the drainage channel is cut first and cleaned last, because the temple must survive the rain before it can survive the gods.
The foundation is not a single layer of stone, it is a system of compression and distribution, where the engineers do not build from memory. They build from drawings that show every stone in its place.
The blacksmith does not make weapons for war here. He makes the tools that shape the temple, and every chisel that breaks is melted down and reforged.
The ramp is temporary, but the wood is not thrown away. Every beam carries the memory of the stone that wrote it, and when the temple is finished, the ramps will become houses. At sunset, the wall becomes a horizon of its own. These stairs have been walked by 10,000 feet before mine, and they will be walked by 10,000 more after I am gone. The night meal is the only time the workers are not workers. They are brothers and fathers and sons sharing food that tastes like home. When he sharpens a chisel, he does it with the patience of a man who knows that every edge he makes will cut the next piece of forever. The stones will stand for thousands of years, but the men who built them will be forgotten. The roller does not carve or lift or shape, it only presses down, and in its simple work it teaches what the temple needs most. The boy is 12 summers old and his hands are already hard as leather. And when he stumbles, the men do not... The column is built in pieces because no single stone is small enough to lift, and no single man is strong enough to hold it. The gap between these stones is thinner than my fingernail, and it has stayed that way for 2,000 years. The men who cut them did not measure with rulers. The groove has no purpose that holds the roof or supports the wall. It is there because the stonecutter believes that beauty. Scaffolding is held together by rope and hope and the trust that every knot was tied by a man who knew his son might climb it tomorrow, and when they fall alone. The red marks are the language of the quarry, telling the builders where each stone must sleep. And without them, the plaster is the skin of the temple, covering the rough bones of the stone, so that the gods see smooth walls when they look down. The roof is the last thing to close and the first thing to fail if the walls are not true, and up here the wind reminds you that the temple is not finished. The temple is not built from the top down, it is built from the ground up, one rung, one stone, one day at a time. Water must have a path even in a temple, because the gods do not like wet feet, and the stone will crack if the rain has nowhere to run. The chisel is the tooth of the temple, and it wears out faster than the stone it cuts, so every day a man must sit here. The lever is older than any god and more useful than any prayer, and every stone in this temple has been moved by nothing more than a...
Water is the cheapest lubricant and the most precious resource, and every drop poured under the stone is a drop that will not be drunk.
The gap is the exact size of the stone because the builders measured it before the stone was even cut, and now the men...
The stone has found its home, and the wall is one piece closer to completion, and for a moment the men stop and breathe.
The crane is the giant arm of the temple, and it must be oiled like a living joint, because wood that rubs against wood without oil... The block above your head weighs more than 10 men, and the only thing holding it is rope and wood and the skill of the men who... The stone is down, and the crane is silent, and the men below are still alive, and that is the only measure of success that matters. The day ends not because the work is done, but because the light is gone, and the men will eat and sleep and dream of stones that will still be waiting for them. The day ends, and the silence returns, yet these stones seem to vibrate with the memory of the thousands of hands that shaped them. I have spent my life documenting the how, But only now do I understand that the why is written. My work here is done, but the story these stones tell will outlast any ink I could ever spill. I go now, leaving the giants to their eternal watch, knowing that some mysteries are not meant to be solved, only witnessed. The stones remain, silent and perfect, forever waiting for the next curious soul to ask the question that has no answer.